The first duty of government is to protect our rights.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government in what we were tasked to do.
Obviously, we over budgeted last year. I hate to say that I was right, but I was right.
And I think that that's what we need to look at more, is trying to get back to what we used to be, where our churches and our families took care of each other instead of relying on the state.
And we have no way to maintain control over the spending of this program, and it will be a disaster for this state long term.
But we have a whole gamut of kids whose parents would like to do something for them and they cannot.
I take our constitutional rights, the constitutional rights of my constituents, very seriously.
This is simply about putting it out of reach of young, innocent, vulnerable children and making our libraries and schools a safe place for them to go.
And I am increasingly frustrated that we cannot stop ourselves from drinking at the public trough.
He's sounding the alarm. He's saying if we don't address these issues, we potentially might have greater problems moving forward.
And Mr. Speaker, no matter how you look at it, no matter how you boil this down, there is never any time that a parent's right to govern what their children see and what they're exposed to should ever be bypassed.
If I was looking at a business and I was looking at these figures, there would be heads rolling because this is unsustainable.
We're supposed to be bottom-up government. We're supposed to be representing my citizens' ideas and your citizens' ideas, and we're supposed to be discussing them and debating them to come to a conclusion.
We need to start making Idaho first. We need to start making America first.
We need to be protecting our First Amendment rights, not inventing ways to slowly chip away at them.
The First Amendment and our freedom of religion, freedom of speech are our first liberties. They are so important. We don't have the rest without them.
Section 221002 Idaho Code to revise the definition and to make a technical correction.
Well, here it is, our Signal Boost reminder for today. Later on today in the Senate Health and Welfare Committee, Senate Bill 1031 is being presented by Senator Brian Lenny, and there's still time to register to testify online, to show up if you're at the Capitol, or send in an email in support of Senate Bill 1031. This will give your health districts in Idaho a better guardrails, better guidelines for them when they are out there giving suggestions. You know, we went over this yesterday. The suggestions are to follow science and to not just arbitrarily listen to so-called experts that have no fact of science, like 6 feet distancing, and that masking children is better for them than not, because it isn't. That has already come out. Anyway, this is a great bill, folks. Senate Bill 1031. So let's make sure you are on top of that one. Holy cow, another Signal Boost. You guys, we are in the thick of it. Speaking of Senator Brian Lenny, folks, House Bill 32, the mask mandate bill, the ending the enforcement of mask mandates, is finally getting a hearing in the Senate. Folks, can you believe it? Bring me up here. I want to share my joy with everybody. Hi, everybody. Matt Edwards here. Idaho Signal is on the air. And it is February 11, and tomorrow, on February 12, the mask mandate bill finally has a hearing in the Senate. This will be its second public hearing, because it first had a hearing in the House, and it where obviously it passed the committee, and then it went to the floor, and it passed the House and the floor, and then the very next day, I flew down to Boise to deliver a stack of over 1,300 of your signatures to support this bill. And so now the bill has a hearing tomorrow in Senate State Affairs. So we thank you. We thank you, Chairman Guthrie. We thank you, Senators' leadership, for making sure that this happens, because we know it's all in your hands. It's all in your hands all the time, whether or not these things get a hearing. And so now it's there, folks. This is the big enchilada. This has to pass the committee in the Senate. If it passes committee in this committee, it has a really great chance of passing on the floor in the Senate. And then all eyes are on the governor when it comes to this bill. So that is tomorrow, Wednesday, February 12th, early in the morning, 8 a.m. in Boise, 8 a.m. And up in the north, it'll be 7 a.m. So we're going to try and get things squared away to support that bill. Okay, that's great. We'll make sure we pay attention to that. Let's go back over to the House. They just voted on a bill. Looks like House Bill 87.
87 is passed House.
Passed the House unanimously there. I don't have that recognized, or I don't have that memorized, whichever one House Bill 87 was, but we'll find out what that was. Now they're moving on to 53. I thought I had the House schedule up in front of me, but it looks like I have the Senate, but that's okay, because I can let you guys know that the Senate has adjourned for the day. The Senate passed 2 bills this morning. I'm sorry, they haven't adjourned for the day, but all the interesting things have happened. Senate Bill 1021 passed this morning. This would allow Senate bill. It was presented by Brandon Shippey. This was in the Senate. Do you guys not have me anymore? Oh, there you go. Okay. The Senate Bill 1021 presented by Senator Shippey. This would clean up and shorten the regulations and the time frame between when children and parents are separating their relationship in order to be adopted by a new family. So this was all about terminating, officially, legally terminating the relationship between biological parents and the child in order to speed up the process for the adoption. Apparently, there was some burdens on the state that the state had to deal with while that process was going, and that shortened it. That's the short of it of what it did. I'm sure it did something different than I can describe it. But and then the other bill was Senate Bill 1032, which directs school boards and school districts to have some sort of policy when it comes to phones and devices in the classroom and on campus. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes. If it does, it passed unanimously in the Senate, I believe, and so I expect that sort of thing to pass. There have been people asking for some sort of device control within the schools, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but I'm sure there'll be some debate going forward, and then we'll see how it lands in those school districts. So, all right, folks, that's where we're headed right now. You can see down below we've got our ticker going with certain bills and where they're at, so that's always good to follow. There was the committees were alive this morning. There was one bill in particular that would limit the use of SNAP benefits of food stamps, to say if you're using welfare food stamps, that you shouldn't be buying soda and candy with it, because that's one of the largest that's one of the biggest expenses on welfare and food, welfare benefits, food stamps, is soda and candy. So there was a long debate in the committee today. And there's Representative Redmond now. And the bill ended up having, a ton of different motions and back and forth. And there were so many different opinions. And the bill ended up being held for 2 weeks. So in 2 weeks, on or thereabout, the bill's going to return and they're going to debate it some more. This is a privileged committee, so there might be a chance and the off chance that it gets rewritten a little bit and they submit a new RS to swap out for what the concerns that were brought up in the committee. But obviously some of the concern here is, should the government be telling you what to eat, what to consume, right? Well, the argument is, if the government's giving you the money, then who's your daddy? All right. I keep saying it. Who's your daddy? Right. I'm your daddy. Then you got to listen to my rules if I'm giving you the money. Right. So that's kind of where we're at right now. And of course, on a serious note, if you're using money from the state to eat unhealthy things, and you become obese, or you start having heart attacks or blood clotting issues or whatever it is, you're going to end up in the hospital, and the state's got to pick up that bill too, right? Because if you're on food stamps already, then chances are you don't have the best health insurance ever, and so that's likely where you're going to stand. So if you're going to rely on the government and insist that they be your daddy, then daddy's got rules, and that's where we're headed. Okay, we're going to keep an eye on the House right now. They're going through some bills. There's two bills in particular we're looking at. One is H. Bill 57, which would raise fees on the Idaho Parks Pass, that you can buy an Idaho Parks Pass every year. When you re-up your registration on your car, or you can just buy it. I think it's $10 for the year, and it gets you access to all of the Idaho parks. There's a bill that's looking to double that, and then take a portion of that money and start a brand new fund that would make new trails or something to that effect. And so I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, we're going to charge Idahoans more to access their own lands, and then create a new fund that then we have to maintain and do. So it's growing government again. Once again, growing government in a place that we don't need to grow government. You want to raise money for the use of our lands? Then charge the Washingtonians that come over. Charge the Californians that are traveling. Charge the out-of-staters more money when they come to use those lands. Okay? We don't need to charge our own citizens for that. Or how about this? We shared a clip yesterday where Representative Shepard said for every year that he's been in the legislature, they've had a surplus. They've had a surplus of money. Well, if you've got a surplus, then why are we raising fees? Just send that money over there. Just do it over there. It's so simple, folks. The first reaction of a lot of these legislators is to just raise taxes, raise a fee. That's their knee-jerk reaction. Instead of thinking outside the box, looking at the budget and say, how can we move things around so that we don't have to raise fees? We don't have to raise taxes. I don't get it. And the same person who's bringing that bill, Petsky, 57, is also going to be put on a board that oversees this money. Or something or other. That's another story for another day. But we're paying attention. We're always paying attention. We're paying attention to that. All right. And then the other bill is House Bill 59. This is another important bill. This is brought up by Representative Bruce Skog. House Bill 59 is the Medical Ethics Defense Act. So this is going to say to doctors and folks in the medical profession that if you are if a procedure or a medical treatment goes against your personal beliefs, that you don't have to be forced to do it. And this is a very, very important bill. This kind of goes along the same lines as to a lesser degree as that baker in Colorado who was trying to be forced to make a cake for a celebration for something that he didn't believe in. Now, of course, the distinction here is almost the same as the baker, where we're not saying a doctor can refuse to work on a patient that they disagree with their lifestyle or their opinions, right? It's not saying I'm going to refuse to treat you if you come into the emergency room and you're dying, right? Just like the baker, I'm not going to refuse someone who walks through my door to buy a cupcake, but the personal services are the things that we're talking about here. And so H 59 is going to be on the floor perhaps today in the House. So we're watching that now. It looks like they're rolling, unless because I can't hear it, they've decided to move the bills to the next day. But that's what we're watching. We're watching here. Okay. Let's see here. Checking the old standby. I know a programming note. We're going to have Representative Barbara Ehart on after the floor is off. So if we're still on the air and the floor is done debating for the day, Representative Ehart will be here, and we haven't been able to get a reaction from her since Trump signed that fantastic bill or that executive order to get men out of women's sports. Yeah, there's that photograph. Look at that. Incredible photograph there. That was a great moment seeing all those folks around there. So really, really awesome. Okay, let's go to the floor. It looks like Representative Bruce Skog is presenting this health medical defense ethics. I'm butchering the name of this thing. I'll let him take it over here. Let's hear.
Does the floor to present the bill and the good lady can.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Medical Ethics Defense Act protects the conscience rights of healthcare professionals and entities. It protects them from being forced to participate in non-emergency procedures that would violate their sincerely held religious, moral, and ethical beliefs. This bill protects them from discrimination when they reasonably exercise their rights of conscience. It also enhances patients' care by protecting them from discrimination when they report violations of the law or exercise their constitutionally protected free speech rights. This bill supersedes previous legislation and federal laws, but does not preempt those that are already on the books. 7 states have already passed this type of bill, and we've kind of passed a half of one. We passed one for the conscience protection of counselors in this state last year, and that's been a success thus far. Current medical conscience issues that professionals bring up in the medical field that are not protected right now, some of these, are assisted suicide, dispensing marijuana and mind-altering drugs, gene editing or other genetic manipulation of children in utero, removal of otherwise healthy body parts on people on sex change purposes, prescribing sex change hormones or puberty blockers for children for sex change purposes, and then various injection products produced or fetal stems from fetal stem cells from aborted children. People have religious or conscience objections to those things and should not have to participate in those procedures. This bill is a product of consulting with numerous agencies, different people that are involved, many stakeholders. And I added some things in this bill that took out a lot of objections, and we didn't have objections much at all at committee hearing. We had many people testify, but no objections. I wanted to send you to see page 3, lines 28 through 36. Make a check mark by that. And then also page 4, lines 18 through 22. These sections were added to give reasonable protection to employers against maybe that rogue employee or somebody that really just doesn't want to work. And that protects us from those outlier kind of unicorn situations that could arise as an employer. And I am a former employer, so I want to make sure that was in there. But most of all, this protects people's rights of conscience. So they don't have to check their religious faith or their conscience when they go to work and want to do a good job. And of course, if there's no enforcement provision, that's merely a wish and not a law. There's a whistleblower protection here and a private right of action in this bill. Not the type of right of action that excites bad actors, but a reasonable right of civil action. It allows injunctive relief from the court to say the person cannot be forced to perform the objected practice. And again, this applies to practices, not people. No one can refuse treatment to someone because of the type of person they are for their beliefs. It's about the practice that would violate their conscience, whatever that might be. It also allows damages to match the harm and reasonable attorney fees so they can be reimbursed for the financial burden of exercising their rights of conscience. In committee, 2 attorneys testified in favor of this bill that had expertise and actually defended people around the country in this type of law. One of those persons resides in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, one of those lawyers. Numerous doctors testified.
All right, we are watching Representative Bruce Skog here. I don't know if Brian Allman, if you're ready to join. Yeah, fantastic. Let's bring Brian up. Brian, good to see you, Allman.
Hey, good to see you, Matt.
Very good. So I don't know if you can hear, we're watching Bruce Skog here with House Bill 59, but I figured we'd just tune in here for a little bit and we'll do some running commentary if needed.
Representing 6 doctors called from Latah County and testified. Didn't expect that. He was all in favor of this bill and explained why. And then I have personal experience in my family through marriage of a young man who went to medical school through our program up to Seattle, and he was constantly under pressure to refer for abortions and be involved in other things he did not want to, but with his conscience he could not. But he had to stay silent. He couldn't speak his mind. And in medicine, like other fields or science, if you can't speak your mind, you can't give the best patient care. So he made it through, and now he's a successful doctor working in North Idaho. We've seen this bill go into practice at least 15 years ago in one of these states, There's not been a plethora of lawsuits that some people wring their hands about. It's been reasonably applied in other states. No reason to think it would not be so in this state. Thinking of anything else to tell you about, but I know it's getting close to lunch and none of you really want to debate against this bill. So ask for your green light.
There we go.
Thank you, gentlemen. You've heard the motion.
Appealing to their
Further debate on the
hunger
motion.
to get this through, huh, Alman?
Well, I'm with them. I'm ready for lunch.
No negative debate. Debate is closed. Question is.
Excellent. No debate.
Wow, no debate on that one. Talk about scheduling. Good scheduling.
What do you think? Party line?
I think so. I think you're going to see the Democrats go one way and the Republicans go the other.
Nelson.
Good lady, you have to. Sorry.
It's party line plus
So
Nelson
everybody
and man wearing.
understands when we ring the bell, that's your chance to come
Yeah.
back in. So if you're in
2 Republicans joined the Democrats. Manwaring and Nelson joined the Democrats
wish to change their vote?
in this. So we've missed out on that. They've missed out on
58 ayes, 11 nays, 1 absent and excused. Majority having voted in favor of House Bill 59. House Bill 59.
Well, what do you think, Alman? I mean, this is one of those bills that helps protect, obviously protecting folks that have, their, what do they call it? The conscience, the conscience of the doctors and so forth.
Yeah, conscience rights, deeply held religious beliefs.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that it just seems reasonable, I think, to most people who are like-minded with us. But then you get, the other side that is bake the cake bigot, that they just want to force people to comply in the name of their ideology.
Right. Okay, we're going to dip out of this. That's Representative Schertz with House Bill 104. More of some building coding, changing of the rules and that sort of thing.
It's what a lot of legislation is. It's just tweaking things here and there.
Yeah. It can really muddy the waters in terms of the things that we want to pay attention to and get done. Alman, we were surprised, I think, by the amount of debate that was going on this morning with Representative Redmond's bill and SNAP benefits. You being able to use food stamps for soda and candy. We saw some of the discussion happen during the print hearing on this, and I guess what we expected to hear was just all sorts of pushback from this on varying sides of the issue. It wasn't just clear black and white. I mean, there were some that were opposed to it because they didn't want government to say what you can and can't eat. They didn't want to set that precedent. And then there were those there was a food sellers conglomerate that said it would be a burden on them to do this. I actually think it probably would just lower their profits a little bit if they can't folks couldn't buy soda and candy from them anymore. But what's your take on this bill? I mean, it's going to come back in 2 weeks apparently.
Yeah, it was an interesting hearing. I actually was in the overflow room. I couldn't be in the same room because it was crowded, not only with the lobbyists and the interested parties, but also a high school group from out east came to visit. So they were in that room for whatever reason. So that's fine. But yeah, it was pretty crazy. So there was testimony for and against. Some of the testimony for was pointing out that obviously we have an obesity crisis, a health crisis, and we've got this new directive now to make America healthy again. And so we shouldn't be subsidizing candy and soda. But then on the other side, people were saying, well, how do you determine what's unhealthy? Maybe years ago, they would have put eggs on the list of things that are unhealthy, but now they're not on the list because they've changed. Representative Ilana Rubel even pointed out that her son, who is a stud, she said he works out all the time, eats protein bars, and would those be counted as candy under the definitions in the bill? So there's a lot of questions about it. But then you had all the parliamentary stuff. There were 3 motions on the table: one to send it to the amending order for fixes, another to kill it entirely, and another to just hold it for 2 weeks. And I think, as you mentioned, that means it's going to come back in 2 weeks. Either the Representative Redmond will have a new RS. And we'll see if the chairman allows him to introduce that. Otherwise, maybe they're just going to gather more data and more argument and go try and persuade some people before it returns.
Yeah. And when I think about the government telling you what you can and can't eat, just in general, like Michael Bloomberg did in New York City when they decided to tax soda, or say that you couldn't have salt on the tables at restaurants anymore. When I think of that to me screams of like a nanny state, someone who's just out there telling, just broad across the board, this is no longer legal here, in this jurisdiction. But conservatives are right to push back on that. When it comes to this, though, there's a streak in me that says, like, I've said it before, like if you're gonna say that I'm your dad, then daddy's got rules, and in this family, I'm not paying for your obesity treatment 10 years from now. So we're not gonna have candy and soda in our house. I mean, I feel like that is also can be a conservative position.
Yeah, and you saw conservatives coming down on both sides of this issue. One interesting thing, how it relates to other things that are going on is during the hearing, I tweeted that the soda bottler is saying that it's an example of government overreach for the legislature to say that you can't have candy or soda on SNAP, which, again, if the government's paying for it, if taxpayers are paying for it, then... But on the other hand, I posted that, and Senator Brandon Shippey, who is an opponent of the school choice bill, replied and said that if the government's giving you money, then the government can regulate it, which he's got a point. So, how does this relate to things like school choice? Is there a difference between direct benefits like SNAP and a tax credit that you claim? It is one of those things that there's not necessarily an easy, pat answer to, and we as conservatives have to really wrestle with it.
Yeah, we do, and we'll continue to do so. So we'll pay attention to this bill, folks. 2 weeks from now, we'll check in and see how it's going. Another interesting exchange, and again, I don't know. I just find this debate fascinating right now. This consent agenda calendar that happens in city councils. We talked about it last week. They had a hearing for it this morning. And again, this is a bill that would say to local governments that if you have a consent calendar, if you have a consent agenda where you just pass in one motion, you pass a bunch of, meaningless little, not meaningless, but they're like just kind of like small little items, like we're going to have a bake sale on this day, we're going to do this on that day, whatever, a rule change here or a policy change there that's been debated over and over again. Like you can put them all on one list and say up or down, we just agree to this and we move on. We consent to all of it. And we've been hearing debates where some cities allow a city council member or the mayor or even a member of the public, as you said, Brian, before, to say, that there's one item on that consent agenda that I think we need to pull out and debate further or dig into it or have a discussion at least on it. And in some cities, Brian, you had said yesterday that your city does that very thing, right?
Yeah, that's until this bill came up, I didn't realize that other cities were different and didn't allow items on the consent agenda to be pulled out even by council members, which, seems strange to me.
Yeah. Well, we had one of those things happen today. A city councilman up in my neck of the woods was one of the opposing what do you call it? Opposition.
Opposition.
Yeah, opposing testifiers. Yes, exactly. Thank you. And it struck me as interesting because we'll play a little bit of it. The lobbyist for the Idaho Cities organization, I forget their official name, but we've seen her before. Cities. Yeah, Idaho Association of Cities. Kelly Packard. She was there this morning in favor of this bill. Let's listen to a little bit of her.
To thank Representative Alfieri, who reached out to our association about this matter so that we could help prior to legislation being brought forward. And I'd also like to thank Senator Taves and Representative Price for working with us on amending the initial language to ensure that we didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Consent agendas are great for routine items, your minutes, your payables that are just daily transactional in nature. However, we think the clarity that is provided with this legislation that it cannot include major items and that one member of a governing body may pull that off an item off of the consent agenda to be considered separately is helpful. To answer some of the questions and concerns that have been posed already today, Most cities actually do adopt Robert's rules. Some have not. Usually your smaller cities have not taken the time to actually formalize that in an ordinance, and you can have some confusion, and I think that this provides some clarity.
Very good, very good. Okay, so she's all for it, the Association of Idaho Cities. Like I mentioned briefly, a sitting city council person up here in my neck of the woods testified in opposition to this, and basically laid out their argument. And then Representative Heather Scott on the committee had a question for Mr. DePriest here.
Mr. Chairman and Ed, I'm curious if your city is part of the Idaho Association of Cities who testified in favor of this.
Let me see how to do this right. Mr. Chairman and Representative, yes, we are. And in fact, the city did not even hear or find out about this until a couple of days ago. So we had not had the chance to reach out to the Idaho Association of Cities. We had discussion yesterday about reaching out to them. Again, this is about the autonomous ability of a city to deal with their particular situation that presents itself. We do not have Robert's rules. We do not have not adopted Mason's. I'm not going to disagree that it is probably a good idea for each city to provide their develop their own individual manuals, but we do not, and we are not required. And the city has forever basically operated as it has without any issues. So I guess in answer to your question, yeah, we are a member. Sorry about that.
Okay, so his own membership is for this bill, but he says, "Oh, but we've never had a problem. We've never had a problem here." How do you govern your city without any type of rules like this, Brian? Robert's rules, Mason. I mean, some sort of order, right?
I can only speculate as to what's going on in Councilmember DePriest's city, but I assume that some places just kind of do it informally. Maybe they follow Roberts, but it's not actually in code. Here in Indy, we definitely follow Roberts or variations thereof. We just had a special meeting last night for people like me who are on city boards or commissions to come in and learn some of the Roberts rules and learn about open meetings laws to make sure we're all following the law there. So I assume they have something. Well,
Brent Crane, ever the person who loves a nice rule book, and sticks to it and moves his ship. This is everyone's favorite committee for a reason. He had some questions here for Mr. DePriest. Do we not have that clip?
Well, I'm looking forward to it.
I know, me too.
I was over in the House Health and Welfare Overflow Room, so I missed all the fun in state affairs.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the one.
For you. So you stated you don't adopt Roberts, you don't adopt Mason's. What do you use then as the rules to govern your meetings?
I think, as you stated, it is probably most likely ordinances and resolutions or whatever. This has been a big discussion with our legal, and we are kind of working our way through this. But to be honest with you, this is my third year as a council member. And my guess is that and this was part of the problem why somebody mentioned the fact that they looked into it and couldn't even find the previous ordinance, and that the attorney had to remove it. And that's kind of what happened here. This is somewhat of a cleanup operation so that we do have a policy to go by to deal with what has recently presented itself. When you consider the history of Hayden, they have basically operated, boy, people can see, I guess they see I'm on here. They basically operated with no problems until this issue has presented itself. But I agree. I think we should develop a procedure manual.
Oh yeah, you certainly should have one.
What do you think? Should we get one up here? This is my city, by the way. I didn't realize we'd be so in the spotlight here.
Well, what jumped out at me about the sponsors of the bill, both sponsors are from up in Coeur d'Alene, so it's almost like they're noticing things in their neighborhood that maybe they'd like to change and are looking for a solution here.
Yeah, and full disclosure, for about a year and a half or so, I sat on the Hayden Arts Commission, and there were a few times where I thought we were governed by Robert's rules, and so a few of us on the dais would try and make motions to that effect, and we were constantly told, well, we don't have Robert's rules here, and I just kind of felt like, why? Well, then what are we doing? How do we make sure things move along here? And I also noticed that Councilman DePriest is watching the program live and commenting. So that's great. Hey, this is a small community all over the state here, so it's good to see everybody have it. But I think we do need this rule, much to the chagrin of those who protest against it. I made the comment earlier that those who protest against some sort of, it looks like, this thing passed committee unanimously. You had the city association up there. You've heard other stories about how people try and use this to sneak through things that can't be debated and pulled out otherwise. And so those who do protest, I think, about this may be using it nefariously, if I don't say so myself.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. Having been watching city councils for a while and taking part in obviously on the library board and other commissions, seems common sense to me. But that maybe it's just because I'm used to that way. It seems to work out fine here. As council members can pull items and just discuss them further, and then they vote and move on. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, and it also helps not being bullied around by a majority part of the council. If you're, go ahead.
I was going to say that's talking about having the minority being able to have a say. That's the whole point of Robert's rules, is that the majority will get its way, but the minority will have its say. And you have the right, even if you're on the minority side of something, to speak your mind as a member of a body, as a member of a council, and this helps that, I think.
I think it does too, because there's nothing that says that even if you do pull something out of the consent agenda, the consent calendar, that it will then fail. It'll just be debated, and the majority could still rule in a way that you hoped it wouldn't. So I like transparency. I like being able to give the minority a voice here. So we're happy to see that thing sail through, much to the chagrin of some other folks. Okay, folks, let's take a short break. I do know that Representative Ehart is tied up at the moment. That's okay. We still have Almond here, so all things are still good in the world. We'll be right back.
That's exactly what happened. You want to pull the tape? You can pull the tape because we now got video.
Idaho is the dirt under your fingernails after an honest day's work. Idaho is the hug around your neck when your daughter spells her first word. Idaho is the written word of the law, steadfast and impartial, guarding liberty for all. Idaho is the family rifle passed down, a legacy of protection and the right to stand firm. Idaho is the echo of your own voice, unshaken and free, standing tall among a world silenced. Idaho is the home that's built to weather storms, not empty wallets. Idaho is the quiet trust between a patient and healer, unbroken and sacred. Idaho is the hymn carried by the Spirit, gathering neighbors together in faith and purpose. Idaho is the laughter around a campfire, a family's bond growing stronger with every word. Idaho is the pioneer's will, firm and clear. We govern ourselves, free and unbound. Idaho is what America was. Let's keep it that way. Ask your legislator to sign the Citizens Alliance of Idaho pledge to preserve our shared values. We ride together.
All right, folks, welcome back. We'll have Almond back up here in a moment, but we have a brand new In the Know Idaho video from our very own Lily Almond. Let's check it out.
If there's one thing that the left, legacy media outlets, and Rhino Republicans all agree on, it's that we need to save our democracy. Some people would argue that we're actually a constitutional republic. If that were true, would we be electing representatives who swear by a set of core principles to carry out the will of the people? I don't think so. Our democracy definitely isn't code for let's undo the work of the founding fathers and vest more and more power in the hands of the elites until there's no America left to save. Democracy means being able to march right up to the people in charge, telling them what you want, and never taking no for an answer. Unless you're a J6er, in which case your democracy tried to overthrow our democracy, and that's not allowed. If men were angels, no government would be necessary. Said no one ever. Democracy is the most wonderful form of government because it's direct representation without any checks or balances. It's kind of like mob rule, but with less pitchforks. I've never read the Constitution before, but I'm pretty sure it talks about democracy a lot. I wonder how many times I'll find it, if I ever get around to looking. I'm pretty sure every single founding father would back me up when I say that democracy is the most stable form of government known to man. Have I ever heard of Federalist number 10? What is that, like a Hamilton song? I heard there's a clause in the Constitution that guarantees every state a Republican form of government. Gross. Did Ron DeSantis write that? The whole point of this country is for me to be able to encroach on other people's God-given rights. It's very important that we're able to come together as a community and completely change the entire structure of our government at the drop of a hat. What could go wrong? So to anyone who's skeptical out there, just remember that true democracy has never been tried. So we guarantee it'll work. And if you were wondering, yes, I do watch the news.
Very good. That is a subject near and dear to my heart, Brian. Probably you too, right?
Yeah, republic, democracy. Yeah, and there's a certain vernacular in which democracy has been used to describe our country, and that's one thing. But the way it's been used the last 5-10 years, ever since Donald Trump came down that escalator, has been very different. Right now we have unelected judges in America in various jurisdictions who are telling the executive branch and the elected president of the executive branch that no, you can't manage your own branch of government. We, minor judges in the judicial branch, can essentially put a kibosh on whatever your plans are. And to top that all off, we have Democrats and pundits saying this is protecting democracy. It really makes you wonder what democracy means here.
Yeah, absolutely. And to go back to our earlier discussion, there's in the Know Idaho right there. Very good. But to go back to the earlier discussion, I saw a comment, I think from, is it from Tony? Can we put up that comment here? Like when you're in a democracy, right? And you don't have Robert's rules. Look, Robert's rules are common sense rules. And without them, you're asking for corruption. I mean, that is again, protecting the minority, and letting them have their say. But letting then the majority vote rule the day is at least it's transparent, and it keeps everybody on a level playing field when you're playing by the same rules. Because when you leave it arbitrarily up, I mean, I was sitting in a council that had no rules, and so we didn't really know at what point we were just at the whim of the direction of the city clerk. Oh yeah, you can do that, or you don't have to do that, or okay, I guess, but. I don't know. It didn't seem like a democracy nor a republic.
Yeah.
So,
I was just in the Senate gallery a few minutes ago, and we, as always, recited the Pledge of Allegiance, and it does say to the republic for which it stands, not to the democracy for which it stands.
That is true. That is very true. Excellent point there. Excellent point. Okay, I'm looking down at the list here to see what else I wanted to chat with you about. There was a. Oh, this is interesting. There was a bill today that brought forward by Representative David Levitt that would allow military families to have either a preference or priority listing when it comes to accepting students into charter schools. Let's listen to a little bit of David Levitt present that.
What this bill is all about. What this does is this ensures that the children of families with at least one parent or legal guardian on active duty or active guard reserved receive the priority admission into a charter school. By adding these families to the existing list of admission preferences, this bill provides greater educational stability for military children who frequently face school disruptions due to relocations. Prioritizing military families in charter schools admission process acknowledges the sacrifices.
Yeah. Oh, cut off abruptly there. That's okay. So yeah, again, trying to honor families that have to move and travel a lot to make sure that they're trying to get into the education places. There's two interesting things to note here. One is that should we be giving preference? I know when we go to the airport, the military get to go on first, and I'm fine with that. I'm not saying I'm not against that. And I love the idea of treating the families that make the biggest sacrifice in our country. But I know that there were some people that there was some question and some pushback on the idea of this preferential treatment when it comes to education. That being said, though, it also shows how much more in demand charter schools are when it comes to other free public schools. Any opinion on that, Alman?
I don't have a strong opinion on it. Obviously, we want to support military and military families. There are conservative cautions about too many carve-outs, too many preferential treatments and prioritization of things. So that's always something you have to be worrying about. But Representative Levitt, who's a veteran himself, obviously makes a good argument that when you're serving and you're taking your family with you, their lives are disrupted continuously. So trying to find some stability there is pretty helpful.
Yeah, I agree. Representative Dale Hawkins self-admitted that he sees both sides of the argument for and against this kind of preferential treatment, and he had some great wise words, as he always does. Let's listen to that for a bit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I a little like Representative Harris, going back and forth in my mind on this, and I do see a need to give some preference to the families that have sacrificed their lives, their planning. They've turned themselves over to a government and they go where they're told to go. And that is not their choice. I mean, they chose to be in the military, but the rest of it is what happens. But I do hear some echoing in the room that concerns me, and that is, if a family is in a charter school system and they have one child and the next child's getting ready to go, and that child gets bumped. And now that we got, as Mr. Harris, Representative Harris explained, you have a family that lives in the area that's now uprooted and has to do two different schools. This is where I've got mixed emotions about the bill. I will support the motion to send it to floor. I'm going to do some personal research between here and there and see how much of a issue this has been for other states, if any, and see if there isn't some way we can take a better look at this. So, I may get to the floor and have a different opinion, but for now, I do support the motion.
Yeah, so very, very, very wise, good consideration. It's good to do your due diligence.
Yeah, Representative Hawkins is always, we can always count on him to bring a very common sense, rational take to everything. And that's not something I thought of. I don't know what their prioritization is. I know some schools, it's like the school choice tax credit. It has a prioritization built in saying that, the first priority is people who've already been in the program. That way, once you've committed to it, you don't get kicked out. Second priority is people making under a certain level of income. And then after that, it's everyone else. So, maybe they could make sure that, people, younger siblings of people who are already in the school are still prioritized. I don't know. But it's, of course, with any law, you've always got to be aware of unintended consequences.
Yeah, very good. All right, Alman, let's let everybody know where they can find you and what you're working on this week.
JumpStateChronicle.com. As always, last night I wrote a long article about how the school choice bill relates to homeschooling and why I think it's reasonable to support. But go read it, make your own decisions. At JumpStateBrian on Twitter. I'll stick around here. I believe something's happening this afternoon in health and welfare.
It's 1031.
The health
district boards. Yeah.
Yeah. So I will be there for that, and we'll try and live tweet that. That's your
very good. Will you be testifying as well, or just monitoring it?
Probably not. I try to just, I could testify on everything because I have a lot of opinions, but I try to testify on things that are just within my personal experience. So I'll be there though, and I'll be watching.
Okay, very good. All right, Alman, we'll check back with you tomorrow. Thanks again.
Yep.
All right. Okay, folks, do we have next week, not this coming weekend, but the following weekend, the 22nd, do we have that graphic? I'm going to be in Idaho Falls, or actually in Ammon. How do you all pronounce it out there? Ammon? I'm going to be out there on Saturday, February 22nd for a Patriot Roundtable, where I'm going to talk about what it takes to run in Idaho as a candidate. What does it take? What does it take, folks? So I thank the good folks out there in East Idaho for having me. I believe Brian Allman spoke there last month, so you guys are getting the Idaho Signal twofer here. But I'll be out there. So if you are in that area, be sure to RSVP. You've probably heard of them. I think they have a Facebook presence and all that, but you can scan that QR code there. I think for whatever reason, that little graphic messed up the email there. But anyway, get in touch with some Patriots out there. They'll know exactly what you're talking about at the Patriot Roundtable. I'll be out there on Saturday, February 22nd. Really excited to do that. That's awesome. Okay. We do hopefully, I think we will be able to get Representative Ehart on here soon before we get out of this broadcast. But in the meantime, we have all these call to actions, all of these calls to action, folks. You know, if you're watching this program, this isn't entertainment. This is, what do I need to do to help preserve our shared values in Idaho and to help one another? Well, here's another thing you can do. Call Governor Little, the commander-in-chief of the Army Idaho National Guard, and ask him to reinstate Major David Worley. That's the phone number for the governor's office. We need to get this case. If you don't know this case, go back, look in the archive, look up the David Worley in our archive, and watch the interview that we had with the Liberty Council, and the scenario that David Worley's in. Simply because he has an opinion, simply because he was active in his community. Outside of being a major in the National Guard, he wasn't doing anything while he was on duty or in the National Guard. But then he shows up for work one day, and all of a sudden he's got a complaint because some subordinate saw his activity in the city and said, I'm offended. He should be kicked out of the Army National Guard. And so he's been on paid leave for a year and a half. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Go read the story. Call up the governor. He's the commander-in-chief of the Army National Guard. And if he says, there's nothing I can do, I can't do anything, why doesn't he just try? Write a letter. Say, hey, reinstate this guy. And then if the general says no, then I'm sure he could do something with his own general. I don't know how it works. But it just seems to me, when you're the commander-in-chief, you can do whatever the heck you want. Within reason, folks, within reason. Speaking of Governor Little, he's also known as Brad from Emmett. Remember this? This was from yesterday. Over at the Teachers Union website, the Idaho Education Association, Brad from Emmett recorded a testimonial about how he was encouraged because of an educator. He's all pro teacher. Look, I love teachers too. I had teachers in my life that had a big impact on my life, right? I mean, of course, these are teachers. But he submitted his story as Brad from Emmett, Idaho. And this is on the Teachers Union website. This is the same union that promotes a quote from, do we have the quote here from one of the teachers, a Bonneville educator? We've got his name now. Danny Gutierrez is on record here in Bonneville as, "This is why I display a rainbow flag in my classroom, to show that these students, that their lives have worth. This is not a political statement. It's simply a means of suicide prevention." Are you kidding me? I mean, this is so offensive to say that the way to prevent suicide in young, mentally ill folks is to have a flag. That's how you prevent suicide, is to hang a pride flag in the classroom. Well, folks, that's Bonneville. That's a Bonneville educator. Speaking of Bonneville, I believe we have Representative Ehart joining us.
Yes. Hi, Matt.
Hello. How do you survive in Bonneville? I'm just so I don't want to open a can of worms on you, but
No, let's not open a can of worms. It sounds like you just had somebody from Bonneville testifying about something.
Well, we were looking at the teachers union website, the Idaho Education Association, and they're full on board with pride flags in classrooms. And then we were also highlighting that Brad from Emmett. Do you know Brad from Emmett, Idaho? He had a testimonial on there. His last name's Little. The governor had a testimonial on the teachers union website. So that's the stuff we're paying attention to. I don't want to waste your time here with our business, but Representative Ehart, I want to show you a photograph and get your reaction. Can we show the photograph of President Trump? Look at this photograph, Representative Ehart, because I believe a lot of your work is in this photograph right here. Look how beautiful that is. How does that make you feel?
Oh yeah. I'll tell you what. I'm ecstatic, and I should have been there. I should have gone anyway. In retrospect, I'm so disappointed in myself that I didn't go out there, but and I see a lot of my colleagues, not the kids, but other colleagues with whom I've been, whether it was traveling the country on the Take Back Title IX, at so many events, at the NCAA events, even at our 50th anniversary of Title IX celebration. And so this is, I don't know if people are paying attention, but of course, this is one of President Trump's 20 planks to save America and make America great again. And I think he called this plank number 17. And I went to one of his rallies. I went to the Montana one and I got in, but every time Trump brought this up, this issue got the largest applause. It always does. This matters to people. And I don't know if it's so much that my work has been vindicated. I think that's been happening through the last few years, including now having 25 states who followed suit and have signed this legislation, into law. But, my own senator, Senator Risch, I have something now hanging on my wall where Senator Risch had honored me. I don't know if I'd be able to see it. Oh, whoops, I just watched it. Sorry, but where Senator Risch had just, graciously honored me for my work in this. And, I'm just so appreciative. Matt, where'd you go? I just lost you. I'm so sorry.
No, we're here. We're here.
You're here. Where am I? Anyway, sorry. Well,
we can still see and hear you. So
you can still see and hear me. Okay. All right. I guess I just can't see myself. So, but bottom line is a lot's been done. This matters to people. It matters to me, obviously. And I'm so grateful that it mattered to President Trump. People don't know, but in 2020, when this was first signed into law, he had his AG, Bill Barr, reach out and contact me to, they wanted to make sure, I think, that they understood it. And then they basically wrote a letter of support. And I think that was really instrumental in holding and staving off the NCAA, as the NCAA was listening to the ACLU, because the ACLU really wanted the NCAA to come out and punish Idaho. If they'd come right out and punished Idaho, and we were able to stave that off in 2020 during the COVID shutdown, I think it absolutely would have discouraged these other states from doing, that which they did. So we had just us in 2020. In 2021, we had 8 more states sign. In 2022, we had 9 more states sign. And, now we're all the way up to 25 states that have signed this. Anyway, it's quite gratifying. This has been important to President Trump because I think it's important to the American people. It's you can call it one of the common sense things, but playing sports does so much for girls and women. And I think that we benefit almost more than our counterparts. So let me just throw something else out there for anybody listening. Before Title IX was enacted in 1972, 1 in 27 girls participated in sports, like high school sports. After Title IX and since Title IX and up through now, we have 2 in 5 participate. That's almost a 1,000% increase. On the flip side, collegiately, we have like almost a 550% increase of female athletes playing at the collegiate level, all I'll say because of Title IX. So it has really benefited us, and the lessons that we learn are life lessons that we take into the workplace and to our families, and certainly able to pass on to our children.
Yeah, that's really the most important thing here. It builds such character. We see it in our young boys when they're able to go through that, but in young women as well. I mean, it is such a character building arena for young people to go through that. It's so great to see this go through. Your resolution commending the women's volleyball team at BSU also passed the Senate yesterday, or this week rather. Yeah, and so what's the next step for that? Does that have to go to the governor, or does that's done now, right?
It's essentially we're on record, but now that letter, the actual letter will be sent. I forget to the Mountain West, to the NCAA, to various people, just to make sure that they understand that this is the support that Idaho and Idaho's legislative body is giving to our student athletes and honoring Boise State women's volleyball. So great. I mean, people may say, well, what was that all about? I think it's important. I think it's important that we make a statement and show our support. And that's what we did.
Yeah. No,
and as you can see, it was a past party line. And I'm just going to tell you, I have spoken with Democrats who 100% wanted to vote for it. They came in my office, but it's a hard thing with, the pressure that the ACLU and the Lambda Legal and all of these groups give. And what I wish people would understand, especially with this legislation, the LGBT essentially have an unholy alliance, especially the L with the T, because this has nothing to do with the L. And it's very narrowly defined with the T.
Right.
But some of them act like, well, we're a group. Well, it doesn't have anything to do with you, though. And there are a heck of a lot of gay women out there. They don't like this either. So this is not about the L, the G, or the B. And it's barely about the T. And so I wish people would recognize that. But, of course, they have to find a reason to be all upset. And, oh, my goodness, this is about the LGBT. No, it's not. So, anyway, I just had to.
A lot of virtues. Yeah, a lot of virtue signaling out there, and a lot of folks on the Democrat side that feel like they can't stray from that tribe. Otherwise, they'll be ostracized and lose all sorts of whatever power they have. It's interesting that happens here in Idaho when they are a super minority and don't really have as much sway as I know they hope they can.
Right.
We've been following a bunch of the bills that you've been presenting over the last couple of weeks here. We covered this bill on human sexuality being taught in schools and making it an opt-in. I just want to hand the floor over to you for a little bit, because you always have free speech on college campuses. That's another big one that we're really high on. Is there anything that you're working on now that you really want to make, that you really think needs help from the people? I mean, some of these things come across and they're just no-brainers, right? But is there anything that you feel you might see some pushback against, that you might want to have people contact their legislators on?
Absolutely. I believe the stronger pushback from this is going to come from the Senate, and that would be Senate Ed. And so it's where it's gotten held up before. But let's start with sexuality. We're not talking about sex education. Okay, as long as we follow Idaho statutes on sex education, we're fine, because our statutes clearly delineate how sex education is supposed to be taught, and I'm fine with that. So, and it's about the physiology and anatomy, and involving the family. I'm fine with that. So the sexuality opt-in has to do with all of the other sexuality as it comes up. Far too often in the classroom, it can come up even in math class, like math class. And so let me just remind people, this is not about content. So the teachers can still teach that. And you're like, what? No, the teachers can still teach that, but they need to opt the children in, which means they need to get parental permission and opt the kids in to sexuality content. And then, I was just looking through my notes real quickly so I could just explain, which maybe you already have. Idaho does not have a human sexuality, and I say human sexuality because some of the ed lobbyists had made such a big deal of this in 2021. Oh, there's not a definition. And so we're providing a definition in our definition section. It's human sexuality. And so this is what it would, if you're teaching something that falls under this category, we're not talking about something like the Naked David in an art class, viewed through the purview of a work of art. We are talking about this. Human sexuality means sexual conduct, sexual pleasure, sexual intimacy, sexual abuse, sexual violence, eroticism, pornography, deviant sexual behavior, sexual attraction, sexual orientation, or any form of sexual identity, gender ideology, or gender conversion. That is what we're defining as human sexuality. If you're going to get into those topics, you just need to get consent from the parent. And, I had posed this because it had come up a few years ago on the Senate side, where one of the senators was kind of bemoaning the fact that this would be a lot of work on the teacher, that they're going to have to send these forms home and get permission because, it has to be done 2 weeks beforehand, meaning you can't have this general opt-in form that everybody just opts into and we're done. No. Every time you teach it, and they were bemoaning how much work it would take. And I remember saying, Mr. Chairman, good senator, how much sex are you planning to teach the kids?
Great point.
So,
Great point. That's what I was thinking to myself.
Yeah.
What?
Yep.
Yeah. That's a great
So
point.
we want to get back to the basics.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you were going to lead to that. We want to get back to the basics. How much are we really going to be focusing on all this stuff? And also the pushback that you had on, for instance, like you said, like the Statue of David and art, or even the Bible, certain sexual things that may happen in the Bible. It's like I don't know if it was Justice Potter or some Supreme Court justice when they talked about obscene material, it when you see it. And so
prurient, yeah.
So when you read off that list,
they're the prurient. I said prurient view. Yes.
Yeah. It when you see it, and we, the amount of harm that can happen to a child when they view something or they hear something, I think is worth whatever amount of work a teacher needs to do to help protect that family and that child. So I commend you on this, Bill. We want to make sure that we were able to help protect the children in this. Yeah.
We do need to do that. And, from other organizations, which I certainly adhere to, that if a child views sexual content, that is sexual abuse, and that is not your call. And so again, this is about consent, not content. This is about putting the parents in the driver's seat, not the schools. And, again, you can still teach this stuff. And so the other thing this bill does is it also provides, something we didn't have before, a cause of action. But before a parent, uses that, it provides the school district an opportunity to remedy the situation, which is probably, a good thing. So, we're doing that. The campus free speech, believe it or not, Idaho has a problem. We have schools here that, are just recovering from a lawsuit up north and where they lost as they suppressed the free speech of 3 conservative students and a conservative professor. And so I have been working with Alliance Defending Freedom. Ironically, Alliance Defending Freedom represented these students in the lawsuit. And like I said, they won, Alliance Defending Freedom and their clients. And so it had gotten held up again on a supposed technicality on the Senate a few years back. And prior to that, it didn't pass. I hope this is a time. We've got 21 states. And as we point out in our legislative findings, that we're using Supreme Court language, black letter law. The language we're using is languages that the Supreme Court has used in defining what our rights are when it comes to free speech. And so they also said that one does not check their First Amendment rights to free speech and et cetera at the edge of a campus. The campus does not get to create speech zones, and we're talking outside. They don't get to create speech zones or send, the conservative Christian over to the North 40 to be able to pass out flyers or something. They can't do that. And kudos to Boise State. Truly, people need to understand this. We have worked very strong and closely for the last couple of years with Boise State. It is almost impossible to work with every single university, but Idaho State is fine. And, I'm pretty sure I hope to get some information back from Lewis and Clark. Even our community college has supported this, a couple of years ago, because it gives them clear direction. And that's what's intended here. So I hope that also will pass and codify what our universities need to be doing. So that, and then the last one that you're probably wondering about is our privacy and safety for women. meaning that our prisons will be designated for females only. I know, common sense, right? But this is following in what Idaho has been doing.
These
So
are
our
easy
prisons will
layups
be-
for you.
you would think, although this
You would
particular
think.
one gets just a little bit tricky, which is why I think it's needed. So only women in women's prisons and only women in our domestic shelters. Heaven knows, especially in other states, that you have that antagonizer, that abuser, and once they find out that their partner or spouse or whatever it may be is being sheltered, they have absolutely gone in there and identified as female and with the intent to abuse. So and who knows, when a man comes into a female space, especially when you come into the space of someone who's been abused, it is psychologically traumatizing to that female. It is wrong. Men do not belong in our private spaces. And then the final one would, of course, codify the same thing on university campuses. That when we have dorms that are designated as female dorms, they are designated as female dorms. That means that somebody who identifies as a female that's really a man, I'm not going to be subjected to, find out at the beginning of the year, oh, my roommate is really a man. And guess what? We're all going to be sharing the bathroom and the shower spaces with him. Yeah, can't do that. So
yeah.
So
Well, there's a case in the Ninth Circuit right now dealing with that issue at the high school level. We had that Senate bill pass 2 years ago, I think. Yeah, 1100, and the Idaho Supreme Court ruled on it and said that the schools can move forward with their policies. But now it's sitting in the Ninth Circuit. We're waiting, and because it's in the Ninth Circuit, the schools are allowed to do whatever policy they want. And so I'm just sickened by it, because once again, this is common sense. What are we doing? Yeah. Putting our girls in harm's way, even just psychologically, like you just said.
Yeah, this is why they want to break up the Ninth Circuit. Just give it to California. It's just it's an absolute mess, and that's why they're the most overturned circuit in the entire circuits. U.S. most overturned, because the Ninth Circuit, they're terrible.
Yeah,
anyway, they're terrible. I could do a better job, and I'm not a judge. Anyway, so
all right.
But those are some of the big ones.
Yeah, very good. Well, we're gonna of course be behind you on all of these. These are really important, and to the audience out there, we want to make sure that they are supporting this too. Where can people go to follow you and support you? Do you have any ways for people to just? I know I have asked you this before.
I'm working on a newsletter. We even have somebody to help so they could follow that, but I it's not done. So pretty much you have to go to my Facebook page, which is Barbara E. Hart, or my political Facebook page, which I don't know, maybe Meta's better now, but that's a little bit harder. But and then I've started to tweet, although I can't get my Twitter name fixed how I wanted it, so I'm just Barbara _E Hart. There are a few other Twitter things out there because I didn't know what I was doing when they were first set up. But my current one is Barbara _E Hart at whatever Twitter.
Good.
I don't know.
We'll make sure to tag you and link to you. No problem.
Okay, that'd be great.
All right. Well, good to see you. Matt. We'll check in with you again. Yeah, take care.
Okay. All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, folks. Nothing like bonus time with Coach E, Representative Barbara E. Hart out of District 33 over there in Idaho Falls, Bonneville County. Fantastic to have her on. All right. Before you go, guys, did you get my email? I think we did get your email. I think we did. We'll have to double check. If you sent an email, we'll double check. You can also call and leave your message, 208-402-4915. Leave a voicemail there, and you will. What is that? I think we have that. That voicemail music. That's our voicemail music. We'll also make it our outro music, folks. Call, leave your message there. Head over to lifecda.com. Use promo code Signal to get 10% off your online order. I just had me some Mineral Ridge this morning from Life. So fantastic. All right, folks. Thank you so much for joining us. You got a lot of bonus time today. I love it. It's so great. We'll be back here tomorrow. And make sure you check our signal boosts. There's a lot of stuff out there you gotta act upon. You gotta act upon it, guys. All right, folks. We'll see you again. Thanks.
This bill, I think, it puts a stake in the ground that says we have a sovereign right to protect what's ours.